Welcome to evo Quickies and welcome to your weekly roundup of all the automotive news from India and the world. I'm Atish, joined by Karan, and Karan's going to walk you through everything we have for you on this episode.
So the big news is the new Mercedes Benz GLA has been launched in India. There's also news about McLaren coming to India and the Bentley Bentayga S, the BMW M4 Competition Convertible, and we'll also be talking about manufacturers giving extended warranties during these COVID times. On the bike side of things, we're talking about the Ducati Multistrada 950 S. It's not a new bike, just a new livery, but we'll talk about that later. And the Triumph Bonneville Bobber.
Awesome. So let's get down to the main news first, and that's the fact that the GLA has been launched in India. Now, the GLA is an extremely important car for Mercedes Benz. Why? Because it's an SUV, and you know SUVs sell like hotcakes. And secondly, it's their entry-level SUV, so it has the potential to do really big numbers. Now, the E-Class has traditionally been the best-selling Mercedes in India, and it is at the moment. But GLA, it has the potential to change that. Let me run you through the prices. The starting point for the GLA range is rupees 42.1 lakh rupees for the GLA 200. Mind you, these are introductory prices, and Mercedes-Benz has announced that they will increase the price by around 1.5 lakh rupees per variant starting July 1st. The other variants, so there are two diesel variants on offer, a 220D, which is front wheel drive, which costs rupees 43.7 lakhs, and there's a 4MATIC, so the same diesel drivetrain but with all-wheel drive, for rupees 46.7 lakhs. Now that is slightly expensive, but I'll come to the competition later. Before that, they also announced prices for the GLA 35 AMG. Now this is the third AMG model that's going to be assembled in India, and it costs rupees 57.3 lakh rupees. But the numbers end of the segment is going to be with the 200 and the 220Ds. So let me talk about that for a moment. In terms of pricing, it is slightly expensive. If you look at the BMW X1, even the front wheel drive variant of the X1 is 1 lakh cheaper than the front wheel drive variants of the GLA, which is quite a lot of money. Yeah, but at the same time, the GLA, it brings so much more to the table. If you just look at the interiors of the GLA, it does the luxury bit of it so much better because it has those big, wide twin 10.25 inch screens. It's got those brushed aluminium finish on the aircon vents, on the switches. The 220D 4MATIC has that AMG line steering wheel because it also gets the AMG line body kit and looks a little sportier, larger 19-inch wheels and all of that. So the GLA does the luxury bit in this luxury SUV segment very well, more than the other cars.
I think that BMW X1 interior is actually a little bit different from all of the other BMWs, where I feel BMW has stepped up quality quite a bit in their other BMWs. Like the 3 Series quality is spectacular. I think the X1 is a little lacking in that department.
Correct. That's because the X1 is slightly old. Last year it got a facelift, but it wasn't a new generation car. It just got a mild nip and tuck. It got larger grills, it got larger tailpipes, a little more tech here and there. But the whole architecture of the interiors is still fairly old. That will need to change if the BMW wants to compete with the GLA. Now the other traditional rival to the GLA is the Q3, but the Q3 isn't sold in India at the moment. The Q2 is, and people who are looking for a GLA will look at the Q2, but you need to remember that the Q2 sits half a segment below the GLA. It is slightly small, a little more cramped, so it may not offer everything that a GLA customer is looking for. Other rivals in this segment, you've got the Volvo XC40, you've got the Mini Countryman. Both of them are very good cars, but both of them are only available with petrol, and the GLA does give you that option of the diesel. So the GLA, the way I would look at it is it's slightly more expensive than what the competition is, but it's also offering you a lot more. We've driven the cars, our reviews are going to be up soon, so stay tuned for that. But it is a very, very competent compact luxury SUV.
And before we move on to talking about the McLarens, why don't you, I wanted to know actually, what do you think about the AMG's pricing at 57 lakhs? I think for a go-fast SUV that you can practically use every day, what do you think about the GLA 35?
Yeah, I think it's great because it is the most affordable go-fast SUV now in the country. It used to be the GLC earlier, the GLC 43, but now the GLA 35 is the most affordable AMG SUV. And we've seen how popular the GLC 43 is. You see it quite a lot on the roads.
Yep.
Not so much the GLE 53. You don't see that as much, but the GLC 43 is fairly popular, and that was because it was the entry-level AMG SUV. This might shake that up. You might see a lot more people going for this GLA 35 now because it is an AMG and it is so affordable.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about McLaren now. So we have got news. In fact, as of our recording of the video today, the news broke that McLaren is coming to India. Now, not too much information is available. We do know they are coming, and we know about 8 to 9 cars are already on order, which is a pretty massive number if you think about it. McLaren is not a company that makes affordable cars, so 8 to 9 cars already on order is quite a good number. And there's also news that a very special car is on its way to India. So that could be fantastic. I cannot wait to see some McLarens on the road. I've already called dibs for the first drive. So let's see how
very
that pans
optimistic, Karan.
But yeah, what do you think about this move?
I think it's great. We've been waiting for McLaren to come here a while. Ferrari's here, Lamborghini's here. McLaren, we've heard that they've been contemplating coming to India for quite some time now, but there was never any official news. Now, I think it is official. They have reached out to customers. Customers have placed orders, and it's big news. The most affordable car from McLaren now, I think, will be the Artura when it launches in India, because
correct.
the whole
that's correct. So that replaces the 570S, which is the
correct. Yeah, the whole Sports Series range is done. Yeah, they've announced that that's been shelved. Now they're only going to be focusing on the Artura and things going forward. They announced that they will be bringing a special car. What do you think that special car is?
So yesterday night I was thinking it's going to be the Senna, but I think that's a bit too optimistic since all the Sennas are probably sold out, and a Senna on Indian roads is probably going to be seriously impractical. But I think it's probably going to be a 765 LT. I hope.
It could be that.
I hope it's going to be a 765
Could be a Speedtail
LT. What do
also.
you think it is? Yeah, could be a Speedtail also. Yeah.
You can't say. I mean, they've been extremely vague, and there's no saying what it is. What we do know is that they're joining hands with a very reputable dealer, so there won't be too much trouble in the sense of like what Ferrari used to have in the past and Porsche had trouble in the past. But I think the dealer that they're going to be joining hands with has a good rep here. They're serious about the luxury car market, and that should bode well for the Indian McLaren customer. Now, McLaren isn't new to India per se, because there are a lot of enthusiasts who are like, you know what, we're not going to wait for McLaren to come to India. We're just going to buy McLarens anyway. Do you know of any Indian customers who have McLarens already?
So Parveen Agarwal from Club GT Kolkata, we've actually done a story with his car when we went to the Bharatmala Road in Jaisalmer, and he's one of the most popular customers who have privately imported a McLaren to India. There's also a 720S, a papaya orange 720S in Delhi, which is actually up for sale supposedly right now, which is again a private import. There's been plenty of McLarens that have come through into India through Carne. Gautam Singhania has got his Senna before. He's also got his 720S, the 540C. So McLaren isn't new per se to India. And when we spoke to Parveen, he said the biggest thing about the McLaren was that it's more usable. It's more easier, or like the ride is better. It's easier to use on an everyday basis as compared to some of his other cars. You've actually driven the 570S, so why don't you tell us?
I drove Praveen's car. I actually drove Praveen's car. He was very kind to let us drive it. We drove it back to back with the Huracan Evo, and I can tell you the difference is night and day. That Huracan Evo is so stiff, so dialed in, but the McLaren, it just floats over everything on our roads. It's unbelievable. And at the same time, it's incredibly nimble and it handles beautifully. That steering, my God, McLaren still champions hydraulic power steering. And the steering,
which is fantastic.
Yeah, and you can feel it. I mean, the steering and the weight transfer on that McLaren 570S was, I've never felt anything like that before, and it was really, really like mind-blowing. And this was the same day that I drove a Lamborghini V10 for the first time, and that blew my mind. But for the McLaren to be able to compete with a NatAs V10 Lamborghini and create an impression, a mark, it's something. It really is something. And I think that usability is going to be why Indian customers are drawn to it, because it rides well. It doesn't matter if the road's a little broken, bumpy. It doesn't send wax up your spine every time you hit something hard. It floats, and it's beautiful.
Now, not to drag on this McLaren topic for too long, we just talked about this last bit. One thing I found is a chink in their armor is the fact that they don't have an SUV. Okay, now enthusiasts might be running at me with, knives for saying this, but Lamborghini's biggest sales is the Urus. They sell an Urus a week in India. Ferrari's getting their SUV. All of these luxury car makers that are in India right now, all of them have SUVs. So, do you think McLaren's going to lose out a bit? Of course, they are going to lose out a bit.
Maybe in terms of numbers, but the question you need to be asking is, do they mind if they lose out? I think they're more purist focused. I know brands even like Aston Martin, now Ferrari, are going to be making SUVs. But McLaren has made it very clear that they want to champion the supercar, and the direction that they're taking with the Artura and the direction that they have taken with cars like the 765 LT and even the Ultimate Series cars, stuff like the Speedtail, are very niche and very, very special cars. No matter what, an SUV is not going to feel as special as something like a Speedtail.
100%.
100%. You can have a McLaren SUV, but will it give you the same feeling that a Speedtail does? Unlikely. So they're probably making their profits and their money off cars like the Elva, the Speedtail, and to each their own. If that business model works for them, it works for them.
Fingers crossed they stay here for a long time.
Yes. So now the next car we have to talk about is the new M4 convertible, and it has one ridiculously complicated long name. It's the M4 Competition Convertible xDrive. I don't even know how many characters that is, and it's just annoying me that car makers are making longer and longer names because they have so many bloody variants for the same car that they have to keep adding words to them to differentiate them. It's so annoying. But yeah, the M4 convertible, basically an M4 two-door M3 with a drop top. This time it has a soft top roof, which is different from the hard top roof on the model it replaces, which obviously saves weight, saves boot space, and should make it a better handler because it saves the weight up top. When you have the center of gravity lowered, it should be a better handler. It's not a car that particularly excites me. I don't know why. I think maybe it has something to do with the fact that it looks the way it does.
I also agree that the front is so heavy that it needs a roof to balance out that. If you can balance out that design, it definitely needs a roof to do that. I feel with the roof chopped off, it looks even more out there than the M4 already does.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the M4's front end. Some people like it. Some people say it's a good thing that BMW is trying to break new ground with car design, but I've not been able to sit well with it. That may change, you never know, because there was a point where I hated the X7's grille, but now the more X7s I see on the road, the more it sits well with me. But the M4, I'm not sure. And without the roof, it looks a bit disproportionate. I don't know if the convertible will come to India. The M3 and M4 will come to India, that's for sure. So the ones with the fixed roofs. And they will hopefully be here by the end of the year. Now, there's no definite...
That's fantastic news.
Yeah, there's no definite date, but fingers crossed.
Okay, so another car that there's not much definite news on is the Bentley Bentayga S. So just to make things clear, there is the standard, if you can call a Bentayga standard, there's the standard Bentayga. There's also the Speed that Bentley announced recently with the W12. And this Bentayga S sits in the middle. So Bentley says there was a huge demand from customers who essentially, Bentley didn't say this, but didn't want to spend extra on the Speed, but still wanted a sportier Bentayga, which is why this S has come out. So the S gets air suspension that can be dialed up to 15% stiffer than it can get on the standard Bentayga. It still gets the V8 and no changes in power, so it's only 542 bhp, 770 Nm of torque, 0 to 100 in 4.4 seconds. So I don't think you really need to go faster. What Bentley is focused is on the other aspects that make an SUV sporty. So it gets a sports exhaust as standard. There's new 22-inch wheels. They say there's a sport mode on the ESC and a sport button on the interior, which also dials up the steering feel. Now we won't know until we drive it, but these changes are small, but they can make a difference on the overall driving experience of a Bentayga.
Yeah, and you need to remember that this is based on the same platform that makes the Urus, the RS Q8, the Cayenne.
Yes,
so
correct.
they've probably borrowed learnings from each of these sporty SUVs and tried to dial up the luxurious Bentayga into a little more sporty car. Cool. And why don't you tell us about the stuff that manufacturers in India are doing to take care of customers during COVID?
Okay, so as we've seen last year, manufacturers had been extending warranties for customers whose warranty periods were expiring during the lockdown, and it's pretty much the same this year as well. So almost all the big companies, so there's Maruti Suzuki, there's Toyota, there's Mahindra, there's Renault, there's on the bike side of things, there's Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda. There's plenty of manufacturers, and if I haven't mentioned the names, you can probably call up your manufacturer, and chances are they have some sort of a program similar to this happening. Now, to explain what it is, basically, if during the lockdown your warranty is expiring, most manufacturers are extending that warranty between April and May expiring warranties to the end of June or the end of July. Now, the specifics of this should be spoken about by a manufacturer. You can even see the dates on the screen right now. And aside from extending warranties, a lot of manufacturers are also offering free services, extended service packages, extended warranties at a very good cost. So all of these programs are basically to help customers who can't get out and get their car serviced at this time to be able to do so once things look better.
And that's a great move because the car industry has been hit badly by COVID-19, but the customers have also been hit, and it's great to see car makers take responsibility for their customers and provide them a little longer period to avail whatever services they had to avail of or if they couldn't because of lockdowns. So thumbs up for the industry for doing that. Now let's talk about two wheels and what's happening on two wheels. There have been two new launches in India. I'll start with the Bonneville Bobber. It's been launched in India in its BS6 guise for 11.75 lakhs. Now that is a fair bit more than the Bobber's price in its BS4 guise. It used to be, I think, 10.2 lakhs or something around that. So prices have been hiked a fair bit, but I think the Bobber is so incredibly cool. Have you seen pictures of the bike?
Yep. So cool. I mean, you look like basically Death Rider or whatever, Ghost Rider. You look like Ghost Rider when you ride that bike, man.
Yeah, so if you don't know what the Bobber is, a Bobber is essentially a motorcycle that has been stripped down to its bare essentials to be more sporty. And this was popularized in America in the 20s and the 30s when they used to strip bikes of their fenders, chop the rear fender, remove rear seats, and just keep them as minimal as possible to make them sporty, and to make them fast. And Triumph has envisioned that on its Bonneville platform in a very modern way, and I think it's really well executed. For starters, you have that floating seat which floats above the rear fender.
That looks too good.
Correct. It's absolutely beautiful, but the only con with that is you can't have a pillion seat on the Bobber. If you want a pillion seat on the Bobber, you go get the Speedmaster, which is essentially the same bike kitted out for touring. The other thing that they've done really well is maintain that hardtail look. So if you look at the Bobber from the side, you won't notice any rear suspension. That's because they've hidden the monoshock behind the frame and under the seat. And again, that's it's such a small design detail that completely transforms how the bike looks. And it takes you back to that era of motoring where bikes didn't have monoshocks at the rear, They had those sprung seats and that was it. And it's a really beautiful, well executed product. And if you have the money, I think it's a great buy. It's a more of style statement than something you take touring or go long distances. But if you want something cool to ride around town on, I think great choice. The Bonneville Bobber is really something.
Another really cool bike that you can ride around town or go touring on is the Ducati Multistrada 950 S. Now, this is not a BS6 launch or anything like that. The BS6 compliant or instead the Euro 5 compliant Multistrada 950 has already existed in India. This is basically just a new livery. So it's GP white, which I think it looks really cool. The white with a little bit of red accents. I think it looks really cool. And it's rupees 20,000 more expensive than the standard colors. So at 15.69 lakhs, I mean, the difference isn't too much. 20,000 rupees when you're paying 15 lakhs isn't so much. Mechanically unchanged from the standard 950S, so it's still damn fast. And I think at 15.69 lakhs, it's almost good value for money.
I mean, it's a Ducati, so it's never going to be the most affordable in the segment. But yeah, it is an extremely capable motorcycle. We rode it in its BS4, guys, the 950. Now there's a 950S with all the electronic suspension and all of that. We're yet to ride that bike, and we're going to bring you a first ride review of it very, very soon. So stay tuned. Now, that's it for the news this week. Thank you so much for joining in. If you have any feedback for us, again, leave it in the comments. Let us know, what do you think of the GLA's pricing? Do you think it has what it takes to dethrone the E-Class as the best-selling Mercedes-Benz in India? We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I'm Atish Mishra, joined by... What's your name?
Karan Singh. Thank you.
Subscribe to the evo India channel and hit the bell icon to keep pace with the thrill of driving.